This is Stan Tinsley speaking. This is Gracie, and she's going to be recounting some of her World War II experiences. All right. Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I think they'll lead in a pretty good sequence to how we both want this thing to come out. When did you join the service?
April 1943.
This question is, why did you volunteer? Of course, you did. And what branch of the service were you in?
Army Nurse Corps.
What do you remember about leaving home?
Well, I was very happy in my job as school nurse teacher in Messina, New York. And I went home over the weekend, about 24 miles home. And my brother was at home from Syracuse, and he had been a World War I flyer with the Canadian Air Corps. And at that time, there was a rumor that they were short of doctors and nurses, and the doctors, the nurses particularly, they were calling for. So I mentioned it at home to my brother that I should hate very much to have to be drafted. And he said, well, why don't you do something about it? And I said, I will, and I did. So I went back to my work and then interviewed my superintendent of schools relative to leaving and going in the Army. And of course, there was nothing he could do but say yes. So I did. I was sworn in at Pine Camp, New York, which is now Camp Drum, New York.
Would they have actually drafted you if you hadn't volunteered?
There were rumors that doctors and nurses might be drafted.
Okay.
Just a rumor, so.
How old were you?
Pardon me?
How old were you when you went in the service? Just roughly.
I was born in 1906 and went in 43.
Okay, that's close enough. We can figure it out. And I guess you've answered this, but could be more than one answer. Was anyone else in your family in the service?
In the Canadian service in World War I, but not World War II.
Okay.
I was the only one.
Okay, this question probably needs to be modified a little bit. Describe the places where you trained and where you went from there.
Good. It's all in here. I was inducted at Pine Camp, now Camp Drum, New York. And from there, I went in as operating room and worked in the operating room when I first went in. Then I went, we were alerted to go to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, for our infiltration course, which was rough. And so we were there about maybe 4 weeks or more when we were alerted after all the personnel came in from all over the country, from New Jersey, the nurses from all around the different states. They were not all from the east, they were from the west and all over. And we were at Camp Atterbury, as I say. From there we went to Camp Shanks, New York. And we were there about a week. And we were then put in to formation and were taken on a tender across the Hudson River to the Aquitania. And that was in the dark at night. And we were there overnight, and the next morning we felt the ship moving, and it was moving on out past the Statue of Liberty. And from there, then we went on, maybe, I don't know how far the blimps followed us anyhow, out of New York. And everything was going along smoothly. And someone came to tell me, one of the officials, that the operating room had not been set up on the Aquitania yet. And would I call my personnel and go down and set it up? It was down the hold of the ship. So I did, and had it all ready in case an emergency would arise. Our third last day out of Scotland, in Greenock, where I have it in here, a German Focke-Wulf came out. They felt the Air Corps on board identified him. Mm-hmm. And the Aquitania turned all her guns on him, and he got away, but the Air Corps felt he was trying to get to the smokestacks and drop a bomb in there. And we were alone, no convoy. Mm-hmm. There wasn't another ship in sight, so scary.
Yeah, sick.
And the storm settled in, and I think you will find it all in here how, without going into detail, that the British guard outside our cabin said for us to not worry, that if it was a submarine they could outrun her. But if it happened to be a warship or, whatever, that it would never find us in the fog that had settled in. Right. And a storm came on. And about 11 o'clock that night, someone came to my cabin, or our cabin. There were 6 of us piled in the cabin for one, and said that our chief of staff was going to operate and do an appendectomy on one of our nurses. Middle of the night, and would I go on down to the operating room? So down I went and got scrubbed in, and the old Aquitania was rolling, but she had a flat bottom and wasn't as rocky as the Queen Mary. Mm-hmm. So we did the appendectomy. I wrapped my legs around the operating room table in order to stand up there, and it did take our one of our trays, knocked it off the table across the floor. But we succeeded in finishing it and got us back to bed. And then we landed in, I'll have to go back here. It was near Greenock, Scotland. And we had to stay on board overnight because, and all the next day, mostly, because the Air Corps had to be taken off. Several groups and other hospitals and other engineering groups, And but we finally went in to Scotland, to Greenock, and we were met with a group of bagpipers, and they played for us, and we were entrained there and went from Liverpool over to Liverpool, over to up to Edinburgh on the East Coast. From there we entrained and went down to Petersburg, and then from there across to Mellis, a little station where we were loaded onto trucks, half-ton trucks, and after dark, and went down the East Coast. In the dark, we had no lights. You knew that you were on the road, but it was narrow. You were hit. The trees were hitting the sides of the trucks. And we got to our station in Windham, England, and we were tired, and they billeted us in huts about the size of a garage. Cement floor, two pot-belly stoves you have, and they said we could sleep the rest of the day. Well, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were called to a meeting in the officers' club, and we were to take over the hospital at once. It was an evacuation hospital at that time. They went out one door and we came in the other. And we put our personnel on duty that night, and we had we have this in the pictures if you wanted any. But our first night there, we heard all this noise, bombing lights, so we got our helmets and our gas masks and went out to see what was going on. And we saw the German planes bombing Ipswich. And they would, they lit up the whole sky, and you could see them diving in. That was about 10 miles from where we were. And our hospital was situated in the middle of the air bases, around the general hospitals and the station and the evac and the field hospitals. So that we saw that the real thing. I mean, we realized we were in the combat zone then. So we had everything set up, and we serviced the B-17s and the B-24s, and we'd go up to the operating room about 7 o'clock. And in the morning, we'd do our elective surgery, meaning about 6 o'clock, the mission would come back. When we'd be going up in the morning about 6 o'clock, you could hear the drone of the engines get warming up to go out on the mission. Then if we weren't busy, we'd watch them get into formation. And then we would count the planes when they came back to see if they were all there. And some of them would come in dragging their parachutes for brakes. And they would drop flares over our hospital if there were severe cases aboard. Then when they got to the air base and landed, the flight surgeon would call the operating room and say they had so many abdominal wounds, so many craniotomies to do that night. And we got busy then, because they'd bring them in, the ambulances would come in shortly, and they'd be in the shock ward, and one of our doctors and an aide or a nurse would go down, and they'd pick out the worst casualties. And one night, in the middle of the night, we were operating. We ran 8 tables at one time, 2 in those missing huts, the 2 end rooms way down at each end, and half a mile long. We'd put 2 tables with screens between. Then we had rooms set up for the minor surgery. And one night, maybe early morning, someone came to me and said, there is a boy down in room so-and-so who won't take his anesthetic until he sees Miss Farley. Well, so of course I went right down there, and this little boy said, you remember me, don't you? I'm so-and-so from Messina, New York. You were my school nurse. And he must have lied about his age. He was only a kid. And really, I felt sorry for him. But we talked, and of course I didn't remember what I did for him. And he's all I can say is that we worked mighty hard. We had our staff on at night in the operating room, and they would have everything done, prepare and set up for the elective surgery in the morning. And then...
How long were you, how many months were you there?
25.
25 months there.
Well, I was in the Army 25.
I mean, at
I
that
went
particular...
over in 43 and came back in November 45.
Okay. What memories do you have of the men and women that served with you, and do you keep in touch with any of them?
I surely do. I have one of the girls worked with me in the operating room for a while, lives in Missouri. And she had formerly lived in New Jersey, Morristown, New Jersey. And one night here, out of the clear sky, about 4 years ago, maybe, or 5, maybe more than that, the phone rang, and this voice said, "This is Marge McCarthy from Morristown, New Jersey." And I had to think, who is she? And then she said, "One of your hut mates." And she said her husband was being transferred to Missouri, and she was having all the girls who were in the hut in England to come for the weekend. So she said, "I know you're far away and can't come," but I went. And I flew up one day and came back the next. Needless to say, I'd had no sleep, but just a few. So that, and then I have another hutmate living in Milford, New York, and I write to her and I hear from her all the time. And 2 or 3 others at Christmas we keep in contact.
What do you remember most about your time overseas?
Oh, we were awfully busy. I know that we worked hard, but we played hard. I mean, when we had annual leave, I know another nurse and I went up to Scotland. We had 2 or 3 days off, and went into Inverness, way up at the tip of Scotland, and then back down through the Grampian Mountains and Lake Ness, looking for the monster, and back to Liverpool and London, and back to Cambridge and to our camp, about an hour out of Cambridge on the east. And that was nice. And we would go into London. We'd stay at the Red Cross, but the one time we went down, we couldn't get in, it was all bombed out, so we had to go to a hotel, and that was very interesting. And then we had a POW camp right near, because when we were free, we were practicing rifle practice and with the handguns. And we'd passed the POW camp. And I remember so well seeing a poor boy standing on a table at attention. Hot? Oh, terribly hot. And we asked our lieutenant, what or why was this? And he said, well, he may have stolen a piece of bread from the ward. They worked in our dining rooms and cleaned our huts and all that. And his German lieutenant probably found it, and he's being punished 10 minutes out of every hour. He stands there for a period of time, isn't it? That was, I thought, cruel. And, of course, we had the planes. You could tell or differentiate between the German planes, the British, and the American by the drone of the engines. And the Germans flew very high. And then we had the V1s and the V2s. The V1s, you could hear them coming. You might wake up with your fingernails in the palm of your hands, squeezing tightly, because they went right over our huts, too, some of them. And one dropped, well, I can't recall if it was a V1 or a V2 outside our hospital in a field and knocked all our glass out of the mess hall. But they were aiming for the ammunition dumps, we think, in the airfields. And the V2s you could not hear. They were they came over piggyback to the coast of England, and they simply, we did go out, even though we weren't supposed to, and watch them about going over the top of the trees over the hospital and our huts, and aiming right for the Air Corps, you know, and for the airfields. Those were things, I think, that stood out.
What were your relationships with civilians overseas?
Oh, I have pictures in there to prove it. They would invite us to their homes, and our hut, four of us were older than the four beds of little girls across on the other side of the hut. They were babies just out of training, and I was in my 30s, I think. But the colonel, our commanding officer, was a grand man from Coral Gables, Florida. And he would be invited to a home, maybe, and he'd get in touch with some of the older girls to come. And I know one night we went to Lord Ironside's apartment, whatever he had. He came into this, I've forgotten what city it was now, and for dinner. And all I remember now is this, we were at a long table, had a huge fireplace in that dining room with almost a half a tree log in the fireplace. But Lord Ironside had the whole elbow out of his tweed suit. I mean, you know, this is the type of people they were. Then, of course, he had wondered if our band would come down and put on a show for a festival or something, so Colonel Gable took care of that. And then our one of the vicars, they called him in the Church of England, Reverend Cotton, and the pictures are in there too, and his wife invited us for dinner, 2 or 3 of us, to their home with Colonel Gable and Colonel Smith, I guess, and a few of the others. And it was, I'm sure that I think it was pheasant we had that night. But another time, another nurse and myself went up to Bra on the Humber River for a weekend, and it was interesting because Hilda, the wife, during World War I, knew my brother in England. And he crashed. He flew the old Camels, you know, those old planes. And he landed in a plowed field. All that happened, he was knocked unconscious and broke his jaw because he knew he was going to crash and was trying to get down. And so this Greenwood family, head workers here, you know, would call on the soldiers. And they invited Leonard to their home, the mother and the girls, and then one of them came over, 2 of them came over to this country to visit my brother, and since the war. And they invited me then when Leonard wrote and told them that I was coming over in my APO number. Hilda wrote and asked if I would come up and bring another nurse if I wanted to. So I did. And we had a beautiful dinner, but I know that it was their Christmas dinner that they gave us because they couldn't. But Colonel Gable, as I say, was a perfect gentleman. He said, now go to the mess hall. You get so much sugar and butter, whatever you want. And we went to the PX and got stockings and clothes, and I can see Hilda sitting on the living room floor, opening that suitcase and saying, "Oh, John, look at this," just delighted with what we had brought. And but we never went to, when we were invited, without bringing a care package.
That's it. What was your rank when you were overseas?
I went over as guess first or second lieutenant, I've forgotten, and captain. Then when I was a captain when I came home.
Mm-hmm.
Then I stayed in the reserves until I came out a lieutenant colonel.
I see.
Every summer when I was with the VA, I went on 2 weeks active duty to Camp Rutgers or something in Alabama, and Jackson in South Carolina, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and so I kept it up and then retired from the Army. When I was 55, we had to retire, I believe, at that time.
So you never got back to the States on leave, did you?
Pardon me?
You never got back to the States at any time on leave, did you?
No, not until we came home. We were supposed to come home on the Queen Elizabeth, but they took her to bring Canadian troops home.
Yeah. That first ship, the Mauritania that you came over on, wasn't it a sister ship to...
The Aquitania.
Aquitania. Was it a sister ship to one of the princess ships? Or?
I'm not sure.
It was a fast ship, wasn't it? Or it had been a big liner.
Yes,
yeah.
We were to go over in 9 days. But what happened after that scare with the German plane coming out they thought from the coast of France, we turned around and came all the way back to the Azores. Took us 9 days to get over instead of 5.
I see. Did you ever have any doubts about what you were doing in the service and why you were there and working like you were?
Just that I felt that I owed it to my country and to the boys. Look what they were doing. You know, we'd have a party at the base, maybe a 200 mission party, and Colonel Gable would invite them, or some of them, to come over. And there might be 4 fighter pilots lined up along one side of the mess hall, which was the dance hall for the night. And the next week or 2 weeks, they'd be coming back again. There'd be 1 or 2 missing. And we had one come back through the underground, which was very good.
What was your plan to do after the war, and did you do what you planned to do?
I was on tenure at the high school. I came back to Messina.
I see.
And then the next, that summer, I received this letter from one of the doctors in Jackson, Mississippi, telling me that I should get in the VA for the benefits, and wrote to several of the girls that were around, lived in New York. And I was the only one that accepted. And I wrote, and I had the position, as I say. I took his letter to the superintendent of schools and just gave it to him. And he had stated the salary and the benefits. And as I say, you couldn't turn it down.
Sure.
You know.
I can understand that. How did the war affect you, and how did it change you?
Maybe I could be more military, maybe. I think actuality, I think I try to be punctual and get to where I'm supposed to be at the right time, and you know, that's drilled into you. So, and certainly being able to what I could for our country and for giving their lives.
Oh, I think the war changed the United States.
Well, I think when I came back first, I thought they haven't realized what they went through. I thought, you know, they just didn't seem to, they didn't seem too excited about it. I mean, we were so excited to get home and all, and after seeing it. But I think that it made us feel that we're not all that secure as a country. We're surrounded by water. We have planes that can get here in a day or so, and that I think that we had good presidents at that time. Roosevelt was strong, and I think that he did very well to, as the way they divided up the European countries over there. He was criticized a bit for it, I think, but it made us more alert that we were not any longer that we were not isolated.
What do you remember most about coming home?
Hitting 3 terrible storms and walking the length of the Queen Mary to every dispensary. I didn't get seasick. And the dining room was empty practically. Those who were down there were green. So I got all these seasick pills and went around to my nurses that we had in our unit, and they were so sick. And so I got, after a while, got a little woozy in one of the storms, and I went up on deck, which was not proper. It was in the middle of the night or sometime. But I had to get fresh air, and I went up, and there was a little cubby hole, like a bench. I got in there and sat down out of the wind, and soon an officer came along, or a guard, and he said, "Don't you think you'd better go down to the dining room, see a movie, or do something?" And I said, "I just have to stay. Let me stay about 10 minutes, and I'll go right on down." He was real nice. But I was afraid I was going to be sick. It was rough. And it was wonderful being out there, being on the ship and not worried about running into mines or submarines.
What changed and what seemed to be the same when you got back? What did you notice, when you got back in the States? What was the biggest change you saw, and what just stayed the same?
As a woman, I suppose, I couldn't get into any of my clothes. I went to downtown to set up a new wardrobe, and I thought the materials were just no good. They weren't like what we had before the war. It just seemed they were much cheaper. And I suppose after they had to be rationed here and everything, they went through all that too, and they were doing the best they could.
When were you discharged?
February something. In February 46. Well, that was ending up my annual leave and all that.
What do you feel that we could have done better during the war?
Yes, I don't know how we could have done any better. Look, the materials that we sent over there to England, and know that they say that Roosevelt was alerted that the Japanese were going to bomb. We don't know that he ever knew that. but it was rumored that
Right.
he did. And that, he may have hesitated too long, but I think he made the right decision because he had to think about the loss of lives
Mhm.
that was going on. But I think that really America did its share and more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we really went all out, and we were very good after the war about the Army of Occupation and the helping out of these countries that were, and went right to work with Germany, helping them to live and rebuild. I think most of my folder is right in this little light.
Mm-hmm.
But one day we was in our 231st train, left Norwich or wherever, over to Cirencester near Bath on the west coast. About we were billeted in Mission House again, and about I had a room, a little room outside of this big ward, and about 11 o'clock, a couple of nurses came bounding in on the bed. Get up, this is VJ Day, they've just surrendered. We're going in to celebrate in Cirencester. Come on, they're getting trucks out. I was so tired, said, no, you won't go. And I went to the ward, and I noticed them digging into their footlockers. I said, now wait a minute, don't unpack yet, because we may still have to go on wherever we're going. We didn't know. But they all went into, a group did, and celebrated. So then, all that summer, that was VJ Day. Then all the rest of the summer, our special services kept us busy. We went on trips to Stratford-on-Avon. I remember we saw she stoops to Cooper, and took a boat ride up the Thames. Went into London, and we managed to keep busy. And they managed to keep us busy, our personnel. In 2 or 3 months, we were sent to Southampton, where we got the Queen Mary. But one of my superiors in the Nurse Corps I met in Southampton wondered if I'd stay and go with them over to the continent and to Austria. I said, and just let me get my feet on United States soil. I wanted to get home so badly. But,
Live in Oak Ridge.
well, Irma, my sister, and her husband was with the Manhattan District, and he came in 42 for business, and then in 43 he brought Irma and a 3-year-old daughter down. And they lived down here at the hotel, and she can show you the room up in Alexander Inn where they lived in one room until they had until they threw up they built a house.
The houses go up,
Overnight.
There wouldn't be anything there tonight. Tomorrow evening you go retired, and she came to Oak Ridge.
To do the same things. We've traveled to Ireland and
It's been real nice.
England again.
Well,
So
that's
that's how
good.
she happened to come to Oak Ridge.
It's way down at the other. When I walked in, and one of the nurses said, "Isn't your sister in Oak Ridge, Tennessee?" I said, "Yeah." No, where in Tennessee was your sister? I said, "Oak Ridge." And she said, "Well, look at the stars and stripes." The Army paper
Oh, yeah.
that
All right.
dropped the bomb.
That was a well-kept secret.
Oh, I tell you, it surely was.
It really was. Now, what Tell me again what hospital this was.
231st
Okay.
Station Hospital.
Where is this located?
It's near Norwich, England.
Okay. A friend of mine, he and his wife and a bunch of their family are getting ready to go to England.
Oh,
His son is marrying an English girl that he met when he was in service over there.
How lovely.
Mm.
Yes, where
Oh,
in
there.
England?
Beg pardon?
Where in England?
It's, I've forgotten the name of the town. I believe they told me it was about 20 miles west of London proper.
Okay.
But
I don't know whether that
I've
would
met
fit.
her. She's a lovely girl.
Will
She
they
was
come
over
back
here
here
this
to
summer.
live?
I think it'd be
I think as soon as his tour's over, they will. She was over here this summer, and I met her. She's a lovely girl.
wonderful. I don't think you could get a pic. That looks faded.
You've heard of Mrs. Kerr, haven't you? The head of the hospice program here for about 30 years.
That sounds familiar.
Jimmy Kerr's wife.
They pronounce it Kerr,
Kerr, K-E-R-R.
yeah.
Through Fort Sanders, that was the first hospice program here, and she'd headed it up until very, very recently when she retired. Now, she was from England, and her husband was a bomber pilot. Had met her in World War II, and she came, back with him shortly after the war, came over here, and been here ever since.
Wow.
You don't know where she lives in Oak
Pardon?
Ridge. You don't know where she lives in Oak Ridge.
No, she doesn't live. She lives in Knoxville.
Oh, lives in Knoxville.
Yeah, but I just thought I thought since she was a nurse that she might, she and my wife were together in the hospital for their first child at the same time.
Oh, well, then they became good friends.
Yeah, they've known one another a long time. She's still pretty. When she came over here as a young girl, she was gorgeous. She was breathtaking.
Wow.
She was one of the prettiest girls I've ever seen in my life.
I remember as a child, Hilda Greenwood coming over from England. Oh, the most gorgeous complexion, and the skin, and her hair was lovely. She was like you say, she just, there was something about her that just stood out.
I am in the operating.
Where is this now? Have we got this now?
Okay.
On the back, I have I'm in the middle, and I just put Grace, but it would be me.
I can see. Okay, but where was this?
That's the operating room.
That's the staff,
231st.
right.
It's all 231st. For 44, this is in my office.
Okay.
We had to
that's
keep
nice.
track of everything in this operating room book. All the what branch of service the boy was in,
Right.
the patient.
There's the operating room.
Yeah, but it's too big.
Well, is
You
you make a
can't-
picture of it, isn't it?
They'll take it down.
Well,
it down.
you're welcome.
Get a larger.
Yeah, that's
Welcome to
good.
it. Now, I'm in the middle here, and that's
Okay.
our operating room.
Mhm.
That's our commanding, our chief of surgery, Colonel
Mhm.
Plateau. Gosh, I knew what kind of a chief of surgery I had when we did that appendix on board ship going over. He was from a Swedish hospital in Brooklyn, Colonel Plateau. And operate with either left or right hand. And
Is
quick,
that right?
and quick, oh my. We were in and out of there in no time.
Now, here you go.
Oh, okay, fine.
I hope it'll fit.
Surely.
It ought to, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Now, this
Let me
is,
get you a little bit more iced tea.
I'm fine.
this is a group of Purple Heart boys, heart veterans, and they were sent from the rehab to help us in the operating room. We had to make all our own dressings, everything that was
I
used.
see.
And I'm helping them there. Yeah.
Okay. See now.
Do you think you have enough pictures?
I think so. Did we ever get a good one of you in here? He'll get all of me if I don't come back with a good one. Man.
Grace, give him that good one of you, and
Which one?
They'll bring it, send it back to you. That big one I like so well.
Oh. Dr. Barney, that we had at Pine Camp, he was with us at the University Hospital in Syracuse in training. He was one of our chiefs of surgery. Yeah. And then we met at Pine Camp. And then another thing I remember from overseas was
that one. I love that one.
One night I was in the operating room. We were working late. And these little things come to mind every once in a while. And this flight surgeon came to the door, and he couldn't not come in because he didn't have a cap and gown on. But I recognized him, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" He was one of our doctors from Glen Cove, Long Island, when I first finished training. He was one of the flight surgeons. I think